I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret moment that happened to me just this morning. I was in the shower and I look out through the glass and there on the wall is a giant spider. Okay, like not so giant, but it was a spider and it was like walking towards the wall. And I literally didn't want to even turn my back because I thought surely as soon as I look away, it's going to be like, running even faster. It's like that kids game, when you play, when you turn your back, you run faster. And anyway, yes, it was terrifying. And I just remember turning around and I would just watch. And seriously, it was coming closer and closer to the glass until eventually I ran screaming and had to go down and get Hannah because that's who I go to when I need to be rescued from spiders. And we won't talk about the fact that it is nowhere to be found. We never caught the spider, and Jonas has assured me it didn't leave. It is somewhere in my room. Thank you, Jonas. I will sleep soundly tonight. But as trivial as it is for me to be afraid of spiders, the real question that I want you to consider today actually is what sparks fear in your life? You see, as we look at chapter 8 again and again, and every single story that occurs in chapter 8, we see this theme that Luke and Jesus want to teach us something about the connection between fear and faith. We see it in verse 22, that story there with the disciples on the lake, and they're afraid. They're afraid of the storm, and they're afraid actually that they're going to die. And Jesus' response to them is, "Where is your faith?" Or in verse 26, when Jesus heals the man who's possessed by a demon, and the people in that story, it's not the man actually, it's the people in the town who were afraid of the cure. They're afraid of what happened, and part of their fear is because their faith actually was in the things, in the economic things that they lost because the pigs ran off the hill, right? Or in verse 43, the woman who reached out and touched Jesus in a crowd, and her fear was not actually that she was afraid of dying or that she was afraid, but she was actually afraid of Jesus's response, because he says, "Who touches me?" And it says that she falls before him trembling. She's afraid of his response. And of course we know that Jesus's response is simply that her faith had healed her. Jesus offers her grace. And then in the last story here, where the woman's story is sort of in the middle, isn't it? But the last story that falls around that is Jairus. Yes, Jairus, whose daughter is ill, and he wants his daughter to be healed. And it's around sentence 49 that actually, because Jesus has paused to deal with a woman who was ill, some people from his home come. And they say, "It's too late, your daughter has died." You see, his worst fear had come to life. The worst had happened. It was too late for Jesus to do anything, or at least that's what the people thought. And Jesus' response to Jairus in verse 15, he says to Jairus, "Don't be afraid, just believe, and she will be healed." Don't be afraid, just believe. I find there's this sort of interesting, it's a bookend, isn't it? The disciples were just afraid that they might die. They wouldn't have probably, but they were afraid that they could die. And Jesus said, "Why don't you have any faith?" And here with Jairus, his daughter actually has died. And Jesus' response is, don't be afraid. Don't let your fear override, but actually allow your fear to give way to faith. And when that happens, Jesus demonstrates that he's able to bring the dead to life. That's what he does. And in verses 54 to 55, we're told that Jesus brings the girl back to life again. You see, because when fear gives way to faith, Jesus is able to bring the dead to life. That's true in the story of Jairus and his daughter, and it's true for us, that our fear can either drive us further away from God and cause us to put our faith in the things around us, in the things that we want to keep us secure and protect us. So we put our faith in those things, which means fear comes at us again and again because those things are insecure in their essence. Or we put our faith in Jesus and our fear doesn't stand a chance because Jesus is the only one who's worthy of our trust. He's worthy of our faith. So my question stands for you, actually. What sparks fear in your life? Are you filled with fear because of circumstances, because you've put your faith in a job, or you've put your faith in culture or society? You've put your faith in things that are inherently insecure. You've put your faith in the people around you to help you get through, and maybe they've let you down? Or is your faith in Jesus, which means your fear doesn't stand a chance. And in the midst of all the things that can happen, from the most difficult, the worst things like death, or the simplest things, the small storms of life, actually fear doesn't stand a chance when our faith is firmly rooted in Jesus.